Hello everyone, this is Stephanie. Welcome to another video. So here is your Juliet necklace, and this goes with the bracelet and the earrings. I didn't have the same color, enough of the same colored stones to make it all in one color. Otherwise I would have. My mistake. I have an order in for that. So here are the earrings for those of you who haven't seen it. Here is the bracelet. When I posted this on Facebook, I did get some questions about making a choker instead. I don't have the neck for a choker, so I made this one, but if you want a choker, all you have to do is extend the length of the bracelet, and this looks beautiful. I put it around my neck as a choker, and it looks so pretty. It will curve enough that it will fit around your neck, or just go straight around your neck like a real choker, you know, like Queen Mary. I don't know, she must have had a great neck. You can do another row of netting and make it a little bit wider. So easy just to turn this into a choker. Very simple. I would use the same clasp and it would be perfect as a choker for those of you who have those beautiful necks. All right. Here are the earrings. For those of you who want a little less bling, I don't know about you, but I am so into bling for the holidays this year. Even if it's all at home, I don't care. I'm going to dress up and look blingy. Even if I wear jeans and a pretty shirt and my blingy jewelry. If you're a little less inclined to the bling, you can always use stones that are more opaque. That gives it a more, I think, a little more casual look. So you can try that as well. I just wanted to show you the necklace a little bit up close. So it's a very substantial necklace. This is not flimsy at all. I want to show you the back. The back is just as beautiful as the front, I think. I mean, I wouldn't show you if I didn't love it. So, you know, it's not that I'm complimenting myself. I'm just saying it's a good one. So this is a keeper or a gifter because this is going to last forever. It's really, I love the color on the back, almost better than the front. So I don't know if you can find this, you know, kind of opaque stone, but that would be pretty too. All right, so I'm going to stop talking now, but I just wanted to give you a little heads up on a few things. All right, so I'm going to clear this off, get a materials list going, and we'll get started on this necklace. Don't forget to like and subscribe and ring the bell so you get notified when I upload a video. All right. Okay, let's get a materials list going. So you need 3 of the 13 by 18 oval fancy stones. You can use a Swarovski. This one is a Potomac Crystals oval fancy stone. This one works just as well. So either one, you know, whichever one you like. You can use the Ignite. Here's the Ignite. That has the no foiling on the back, or the regular, which has the foiling on the back. Up to you, whichever one you love. You need 2 14 by 10 millimeter fancy stones. I'm using the Ignite because this is what I have. I've already bezeled one, so here's the other one. You need 2 colors of Delicas or Aiko, Toho Aikos. If you want to do a 2-color bezel, or 1 color if you just want to keep it all 1 color. 15-0 seed bead, 11-0 seed bead. I have a few of my 4 millimeter bicones, not 14. Some 3 millimeter pearls, 4 millimeter pearls. I have a 2-strand box clasp here. This is that pretty brass one that I love. I also have a cleaner for you if you want to clean yours, because I always clean mine. I have a little stop bead. I have this drop that I was going to put here. I don't really think it needs it, but if you want to put a drop on, you can. Size 10 beading needle, size 12, you might need that. Have it handy. 8-pound Fireline black satin. Don't forget the Ringberries mat. That's my big blue mat. 10% off coupon code. Use that so you get 10% off when I save a couple of bucks. Here's the No More Oops bead tray. There's the address down below in the description box. Don't forget, everything that I've used that I will use here is listed in this description box down below under the video. All the color, sizes, shapes, amounts, everything you need. Anything I forget, any more information that you might need will be down there. So please don't forget to click the down arrow to show more. All the box will open and everything will be there. You might need maybe a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, and you definitely need snacks. All right, I'm going to clear this off and we'll get started. Okay, let's get started on the 13 by 18 millimeter stone. So thread your needle with about 5 feet of thread, put on a stop bead about right in the middle. So we're going to use half the thread for one side of the bezel, half the thread for the other, and I'm going to use the leftover thread on each side to add some pearls for the connections. All right, so I've picked up and dropped down to my stop bead 40 of my 11-0 Delicas, or in 2 different colors. So I'm alternating color. You don't have to do that. You can just do it all in 1 color if you like. In fact, actually, I have an Aiko and a Delica in here. So the gold is the Aiko and the Delica is that sort of plummy color. All right, so I'm going to make this into a circle by sewing through the first bead after my stop bead. So right there. I'm not going to spend too much time on the bezel because we've done so many of them, and I'll link my bezel playlist in the description box below the video, and I'll try to get it up there in the cards as well. So if you're more of a beginner, you can, check those out. All right, so here I'm exiting because I'm alternating, I'm exiting this plum colored bead. So I'm going to pick up, let me move these guys over here, my gold bead. I'm going to skip the next bead and sew through the following bead, which is the plum bead. Like that. Make sure that sits on top of the previous gold bead. So when you're alternating, all you have to do is pick up your gold bead, sew through your purple bead, or your plum bead. If you're not alternating, you're picking up a bead, exiting here, skipping the next bead, sewing through the following bead. Okay, just going to do that all the way around, and then we're going to meet at the end and step up. We're back, so we're ready to step up. So I'm exiting my plum bead, picking up a gold, skipping the gold bead, sewing through this next plum, and the gold bead on the diagonal. I'll put my thumb in a second. Like that. It's going to step me up to put more and get me ready to put more beads on. Now I'm going to be picking up a plum, just sewing through every sticking out gold bead. Like that. So do that all the way around, and then I'll meet you at the end and we'll step up again. Okay, coming down to the end, so I'm putting on my last plum bead. So I'm exiting the gold, picking up a plum, sewing through the next gold bead and the plum one on the diagonal, and now I'm ready to put some more beads on. So I'm just I'm pulling it lightly, but not super tight. I'd never pull my bezels super tight. I don't think that's necessary. So here I'm going to start adding some 15-ohs. So I'm going to pick up one 15-oh and I'm going to sew through every sticking out Delica. Like that. And I'm just letting it curve around my thumb. Gently curve around my thumb. Like that. I'm not pulling it super tight, just snug enough to get the beads on. Like that. See? There we go. All right, you're going to do that all the way around, and then I'm just going to let you go ahead and step up and put another round of 15-ohs on. So you're going to have 2 rounds of 15-ohs on, and when you're done, meet me back here and we'll continue. Just back for a second. So I've gotten my first round of 15-ohs on, and I've stepped up, and see how I put it on my forefinger and gave it a little pull, and then I'm putting on my next round of 15-ohs, and if you notice it starts to pull in, see, like that. So it's really turning into a nice little shape right now. All right, so I just wanted to give you that little tip. All right, see you at the end. Okay, we're back. So I finished both rounds and I've stepped up, and I just, at this point you can pop your stone in just for shape, and it's a perfect fit. But I'm going to take it out again. So here, that kind of shaped my bezel a little bit. Looks really good. I'm just going to leave this thread and needle because we're going to use it again, most likely. And I'm going to get to the other side. So here's what it looks like. So my thread is exiting this purple bead. Yes, the plum bead right here. So I want to go in the direction of the thread. I want to get thread. I want to get to the outside so I can add more beads. So I'm just sewing through this gold bead on the outside. So now I'm ready to put more beads on. I'm going to take my stone. I'm going to pop it in. I'm popping it in with the front of the stone facing me. I guess it doesn't matter which way you put it in. This is what it looks like. Wow, isn't it pretty? I love these Ignite stones. Look how gorgeous that is from the back. You can use it either way. Well, of course you have different facets on the back. Anyway, so here, this is what it looks like when you put it in. So I'm just going to hold it with my thumb and my forefinger. And I'm just going to start adding 15-ohs. So I'm just going to sew through every sticking out gold bead, put on a round of 15-ohs, like that. And I'm just moving the piece around as I hold it between my thumb and my forefinger. It's not going to stay yet. It's going to take a little while. So you're going to do that all the way around, and then you're going to do another round. So I'm going to do 2 rounds of 15-ohs on this side, and then come back and we'll do the little scallop edge on the inside. Just a little tip as we go along. As I put a bead on, so I'm putting on a 15-oh, I'm pulling inward, not this way or straight down, pulling inward a little bit, like that, and that kind of holds it, you know, keeps everybody sort of in shape, pulling in slightly. Okay, so get that done, you know, get your second round of 15-0s on, and then we'll continue. Okay, we're back, so I have both rounds of 15-0s on. Now I'm going to do that little scallop on the inside. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. See how it's sort of scalloped the edge, the interior edge? So if you want to do that, I'll just give you a little, you know, start you off on that. All right. So I've come around and I've stepped up with my 15-0s. So I'm exiting a 15-0. I'm just going to pick up a 15-0. And I'm going to sew through the next 15-0 like usual. Like that. And then I'm going to sew through the next bead, which is this one down here on the diagonal, right there. And then the one on the diagonal going up to bring me to the top again. So I'm going through those two beads, and then I'm going to add another 15-0 between the two 15-0s, like this. So you're just moving your thread around a little bit to make that scallop. So here I've put that 15-0 on. I'm going to sew through this one and this one here and this one. If you can do it at the same time, go ahead. If not, just do one at a time. So that one, and then this one, and then I'm putting on a 15-0 through the next sticking out 15-0. So I'm just alternating that all the way around, and it's giving me that little scalloped look. All right, so get that done on the side, and then meet me back here and we'll continue. Okay, back to the end. So I've done the scallops all the way around, so I'm exiting this 15-0 right here. I'm just going to sew through this 15-0, so just like we were doing, but now I'm not going to keep going because I'm already done with the scallops, so I'm going to sew through this Delica and then another one on the diagonal. I'm going to leave this thread. I've got a nice long thread. We're going to be using that thread, so you know, just get to this point and then come on back and we'll continue. We're back, so this is where we are so far. So pretty. It looks very vintage. That's what I'm liking about these Ignite stones. They're so vintage. They're really beautiful. And I love these Delicas too, these sort of grape colored Delicas. I hope you can see the color. They're really pretty. All right, so let's continue. So here I'm going to the back right now. So I'm exiting one of my 15-0s on the back. I'm just going to give it a little pull. Make sure everybody's nice and tight. So let's say I'm exiting here. It doesn't matter where, yeah, you'll be exiting one of these 15-0s. I'm just going to sew on the diagonal through this 15-0. And then I'm going to sew through one of the Delicas. And on the diagonal, I'm going to sew through a few Delicas. I usually don't cut the threads off yet because if I can use it, we have a little bit of embellishing to go yet on this. So if we can use this, I like to have it around. So let's go back to the front. And, you know, if you're happy with your bezel, if it's nice and tight, mine's good and snug. If it's not snug, you can sew around through your Delicas. So here, just to give you an idea, I'm exiting this plum colored one. You can just go on the diagonal and sew through them a little bit. If you happen to be a super loose beater or something, you can just sew through these guys on the diagonal. So mine's fine, so I'm not going to continue with that. So now I'm going to put on the stitch in the ditch. So the stitch in the ditch is going to be, I'm going to sew through this gold Delica here. So I want my stitch in the ditch around this edge. I'm exiting this plum one at the moment, plum bead. So I'm just going to go on the diagonal through this gold one. And then I'm going to pick up an 11-0. And I'm going to sew through the next gold Delica. I'm going to pick up an 11-0 and sew through the next gold Delica. So my stitch in the ditch is sort of one bead in. So if I look at the back, here's the plum bead, and then my stitch in the ditch is through the next round of Delicas, which is the gold one. Just sits nicely that way. And I'm putting on, and as I do my stitch in the ditch, I'm giving it a nice tug. We're going to make sure the stitch in the ditch is nice and snug because that's where we're going to be connecting. So I'll show you how to end it off so that it's nice and snug and that your piece will be nice and tight. All right, so just do that all the way around and meet me at the end and we'll continue. Okay, coming down to the end of the stitch in the ditch. So I've come all the way around and I just have a bead to put here, so I'm just going to sew through the next gold one. I'm not going through the 11-0, just the round bead, just the Delica like that. I'm going to give that a nice pull. All my beads should sit nicely. I mean, they may move back and forth a little bit, but they're not going to come out. You know, you want to make sure they're sitting nicely. So I'm exiting this, I'm exiting this gold Delica. I'm going to sew on the diagonal through that plum color Delica, and I'm going to do this around a bit just because we want to make sure those are nice and snug. I'm going to sew through this gold one, so I'm going on the diagonal. Now I want to reverse direction, so you can reverse direction right here. So do you see that? You're coming through this gold Delica. Just sew through this one on the other side. Don't worry about it, you'll get through. See? And then as you're pulling through, just make sure your thread doesn't hook on any of the previous beads. See how it could hook right there? I just make sure that it's in the right place, but there you go. Now I've locked that into place. I'm going to sew through this one on the diagonal. I'm going to sew through this one on the diagonal. So the gold one on the diagonal. So I'm just, again, going on the diagonal. And when you feel that that's nice and snug, and you think your bezel is good, you can stop. You can actually go around in reverse direction a couple of times. I'm still going to keep the threads on it because we're going to do these little connections here. So we're going to do them on the bezel. So why not use the thread that we have to do that? All right, so get that done and do 2 more. So you need 3 altogether. 1, 2, 3, and then meet me back here and we'll continue. Okay, we're back. So here's one of my bezels, and what we're going to do is we're going to put on some sort of setup beads for our connections. So here are the connections here. So the beads we're going to put on this particular bezel are going to be the two beads here and 2 beads here, and then we're going to do the same thing on the ends here. We'll get to that, and we'll get that middle bead on too. But right now we're going to put these on just to set up for when we want to connect. All right? So let me put that aside. All right, so here's my bezel. So I want to find center on my bezel. So if I just put my needle down at the center, lengthwise like this, vertically, I see that this stitch in the ditch bead here is right at center. And one on either end will be at center. If they're not, you can always like move your bezel a little with your fingers, like but it should be, you should be able to find a bead that's centered enough to get this on. All right, so there's my center. There's my stitch in the ditch bead. I want this stitch in the ditch bead, this one, and this one, these 3 beads to be clear. And I want the pearls, okay, so here are the 3 right there. I want the pearls to go here and here. Here and here. So I want that thread coming out right here, so I can put a pearl here and here. So it is on that side, I just moved it, but it isn't on this side, so I'll move it just in case you are not where, you probably won't be where it's supposed to come out, so you'll have to move your thread. So I'm exiting this Delica right here. I'm going to sew on the diagonal through this Delica. Just going to work my way up to this bead right here. So I've sewn through the purple one. I'm going to sew through this one like that, and then I'm going to sew through this stitch in the ditch right there. So I should be able to put a bead here and here, have my 3 beads open here, and then put a bead here and here. So let's put on a pearl. So I'm sewing through the next stitch in the ditch bead, and I'm going to sew through the next. Oops. I went through 2. Like that. Okay, so this is where I am now, and I have a trash truck outside that is like making a most horrendous noise. So I'm hoping that that will go away. We'll see. All right, so this is where I am. All right, so we have those two pearls on. Now I want to move my thread around so that I am down and exiting this stitch in the ditch bead again, because I want to go through this bead and up through these and come out the pearl. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm exiting the stitch in the ditch bead. I'm just going to sew through this Delica. So I'm just reversing direction. It's always good. And then I'm just going to go down on the diagonal like this. Just on, moving around on the diagonal till I get to where I can turn around and sew through that 11-0 stitch in the ditch right here. I'm just going to maneuver my needle in, sew through it like that. And now I'm going to sew through the pearl, the 11-0, and the next pearl. And now I have those, the one side on. Now the other side, again, so I'm already set up to where my pearls are going to go. So I'm going to put a pearl through here. I'm going to put a pearl through here. So that's how that looks. If I hold it up against the sample, see my beads are exactly in the right place right there. Okay, so after you put the other side on, you want to do the same thing you did with where I put the other two pearls on. You're going to sew down through on the diagonal through all the beads, back up through this 11-0, through the pearl 11-0 and the pearl, and that way your both your threads will be in the perfect place for connecting them to the next bezel. All right, so get that done and come on back and we'll continue. Okay, we're back. So we're going to put the little connection beads on the next 13 by 18 millimeter bezel. So this is how it's going to go. All right, so we want to add them on the same type of connection. We just want to add it on horizontally. So you want to be looking at like center here, and then you want to pick the 3 beads on the side, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, that are closest to the center there. And if your beads are sort of not centered as much as you like, you can actually kind of, push it around a little bit, just by a fraction to get them to fit. And I think, it's fine. I haven't had any trouble so far. So you want to make sure whatever your thread you're using, whether you're adding a thread or you're using a thread that, from the bezel, that you are exiting in the right place. So it's going to be this group of 3, and I'm exiting out of this end or this end. It doesn't really matter. You just want to put make sure you have a bead here and a bead here. So if you're not there, you know what to do. You're just going to work around your bezel on the diagonal until you're coming out of this bead. All right, so we've done that a bunch of times already, so I trust you can get there. So here I'm just going to put on a pearl here. I'm going to put on a pearl right there. Now I'm pretty well centered. You want to move this thread back around and out through this pearl, so I'm doing that by sewing through just the beads on the diagonal till I get to that that 11-0 after the pearl. So just see on the diagonal, coming out of that plum one, reversing direction. I'm going to lock everything into place and help us get to where we want to go. So reversed one through this 11-0, through the pearl 11-0, and the next pearl, and now we have our piece set up. This bezel set up. So here we go like that. And don't worry about all the threads. Before we actually connect everybody, we're going to be cutting off all the excess threads and only leaving the threads for the connections. All right, so get that done. If you have to rewind a little bit, do that. But get that done and then meet me back here. Oh, and then do the other one as well, the 13 by 18. So they're going to be the same. So this one's going to be here and then the other one's going to be, so we're going to make 2 exactly the same like this. All right, so then meet me back here and we'll continue. Okay, now we're going to bezel the 14 by 10 millimeter stone. I'm going to kind of breeze through this pretty quickly because we've done it twice already, So if you need a longer, video on it, of course, I'm going to link the bezel down below in the description box. I'll try to get it up there as well. So don't worry about it if you need a little bit more time to do it. So you're going to thread your needle with about almost 3 feet of thread. Put on a stop bead in the middle, just like we've been doing. So I've picked up and dropped down to my stop bead 30 of my Delicas. Now, I'm alternating, so I have 15 of each, a gold and that plum color. So a couple of people have asked me when they made the bracelet or the earrings that they thought they might need 32 Delicas. The 30 works perfectly for me, but if you're a super tight beater, you can try 32. Maybe that would, maybe that would work, or maybe depending on the coating of the beads and such, it might, it might bump you up to 32. But I have been having very good luck for all the pieces I've made with 30. So, just know that you can always try 32. All right, so I'm going to sew these into a circle. I'm going to sew through the first bead after my stop bead. And then I'm going to just do my peyote bezel, so picking up a bead, skipping the next bead, sewing through the following bead. Okay, so just like we've been doing, picking up a bead, if you're alternating, sewing through that plum bead. Okay, so you're just going to do that all the way around, and then we're going to meet at the end, and we'll step up. Okay, coming down to the end, I'm ready to step up. So exiting the purple bead, picking up the gold bead, sewing through this purple bead, and the one on the diagonal. Now I'm stepped up. Okay, now we're going to get our 15-0s and start putting a 15-0 in between each sticking out Delica. So we're going to do that all the way around. Okay, and then, whoops. Then I'm actually going to let you step up on your own and do another round. Okay, and then meet me back after that. And okay, I'm back. So I've done both of my 15-0 rounds there. Now I'm going to just leave that thread. I'm going to take the stop bead off the other thread and thread a needle. And then you want to move your thread from, I'm exiting this purple bead, plum bead. I just want to move it to one of these outside beads here. So I'm just going to sew through this gold bead like that. I'm going to pop my stone in like that. Let's see. I mean, it's a really good fit, so I don't know about the 32 Delicas. I mean, if you try it, I haven't tried it. If you try it, let me know how that works out. Just going to put a 15-0 in between each sticking out Delica like we did before. So this is, we have our Delicas on and then 2 rounds of 15-0s after that on either side. So I'm just going to let you do that. So you have your 15-0s on, first round, step up and do a second round, and then meet me back here and we'll continue. Okay, we're back. So here I'm done with my 15-0s. Now I just want to set myself up to put on the stitch in the ditch. So here I've come around, I'm put on my last 15-0 here. I'm just going to sew through this 15-0 underneath, sort of at the diagonal, give it a pull, and then I want to go through this Delica right here. I just want to work my way down to the gold Delicas towards the back, like that, through this center one. And on this particular piece, you're going to put your stitch in the ditch through these, the Delicas that are closest to the 15-0s, whereas on the 13 by 18 it was slightly up, but this one you want them back here. Just turns out it looks better that way. I think it does anyway. All right, so now I'm exiting this bottom Delica before the 15-0s. I'm just gonna put 11-0 on there and my stitch in the ditch, sew through every Delica on that line, like that. So it looks like. Okay, so get to that point, go all the way around, and then meet me at the end, and we'll put on the connecting pearls. Okay, coming down to the end, I'm going to put my last stitch in the ditch on. So exiting the gold, sewing through this gold one, here. Might need your size 12 beading needle here. Now I'm just going to, so I'm exiting this gold bead here. I'm just going to sew on the diagonal to sew that in place, and I want to get to these 3 beads on the side, so we're going to connect, see that? The 2 beads in between those 3 stitch in the ditch beads. So I'm just going to move my thread like this, just going on the diagonal till I get to the beads that I want to use. So let me pop through this guy, just looking, I want to get to this one. So through this one, and let's see, I'm going to go through this little one here, just want to turn around, and then through this one, locked in place. So I've locked my thread in place, and then I'm going to sew through this. Stitch in the ditch bead right there. I'm going to put one pearl on and put the second pearl on, just like that. Okay, so get that done, and you're going to do that on both of your, there's my trash truck again. You're going to do that on both of your 14 millimeter bezels. So only on one side each though, like this, okay? So you're just going to do that just on one side, don't do it on both sides. Sorry about the noise, guys. All right, so then maybe back here and we'll continue. Okay, just back for a second now that the trash truck has left. So after you get your pearls on, remember you have to sew around so you're coming out of the, so you can go back down and come out of the top of the pearl. So here, exiting here, just like we've been doing. I'm going to do this quickly. We're sewing on the diagonal through all our beads like this, okay, and then back through this one and then down through the pearl, 11-0 pearl, and now you're set up to put more beads on. So you just want it on the pearls on only on one side of these of the 14 millimeter bezels. All right, so get to that point, and then I just want to show you what you should have at this point. So you'll have, and as I said, we're going to cut all these strings off. You'll have this one, you'll have this one, you'll have this one, pull out for a second, and then you'll have these two, whoops, here and here. So that's what all your pieces are going to look like. Oh, it's coming together, isn't it? All right. So just get all your bezels done to this point, and then come on back. We'll do the netting part. Well, this is the bracelet, but it's the same netting. We'll do the netting part and the connections, and then we'll just have all the pieces, put all the pieces together. That's the really easy, fun part. All right, so get all these guys done, and then we'll come on back and we'll work on the netting. Okay, we're back. So here are all my bezels, and I thought before we did the the necklace part, it might be fun to connect all the bezels together. So before we even do that, we're going to get rid of some of these threads. So I've already gotten rid of the 2 end threads here. I don't need those on the 14 millimeters. And you only need 1 thread to sew the pearls together. So I'm going to use, this is how it's going to go together, okay? So I'm going to use the 2 threads that are on the center bezel right here to sew these pearls to these pearls, which means I'm going to get rid of this thread, and I'm going to get rid of the thread on here. And I'll just show you how to do that, and then you can go off and do it yourself. So here we're exiting the pearl. I just chose those 2 because this thread is starting to fray a little bit on the end, so I thought let me just get rid of this one and use the better threads on that one. So I'm exiting the pearl. I'm just going to sew down through the 11-0 And then just like we've been doing, I'm just going to just sew through the Delica. So I reverse direction, and I'm sewing just through some of the Delicas just to get rid of the thread. I mean, we've done a lot of reinforcing on this so far, so I don't think you have to go crazy, but just make sure it's, you know, nice and this thread is sewn in, and then you can burn this thread off or clip it off. And so the way we're going to connect is with this top thread from this one. So I'm going to sew this thread in as well. And then you want to make, because you're going to use these too, right? And then you want to make a decision which threads you want to use to connect to the smaller beads, you know, the smaller bezels. So choose, I think I'm going to use the thread that's on, I'm going to use the thread that's on the bigger bezel to connect to the smaller one, but whichever threads look the best to you. So do all your, you know, sewing in of the threads you're not going to use, and then come back and we will do the connections. All right, so now we're going to do some connecting. But before we do, I just wanted to mention that when I did my second 14 millimeter stone, I used 32 beads, and just to see what the difference was. So here are the two. I'm thinking that this is the 32. I don't feel like counting them right now if I just mix them up. They both look pretty much the same, only the one, when I used 32 rather than 30 to start with, I pulled super tight on it, you know, so I guess I'm more of a loose bezeler, so it doesn't take me as, you know, it didn't take me as many to do the 14 millimeter, but if you're finding that it's too tight and you need it a little bit bigger, then use the 32. It seems to work. I mean, when I press on them, they seem pretty much the same, so I guess either way is good. All right, so now we're going to connect. So here I've threaded a needle with one of the threads. I'm exiting, so I'm starting with this guy, I'm exiting the pearl, a 3 millimeter pearl at the top. I'm going to pick up an 11/0, and I'm going to go through the 3 millimeter pearl right here, just like that. Okay, then I'm going to sew down through the 11/0. I'm going to have to kind of tilt your needle or use a 12 beading needle, and the pearl. So I'm just going down like that. I'm going to pick up an 11/0. I'm going to sew just through this pearl on this side. I'm not going through the 11/0 on the bezel. So through the pearl, like that, and then I'm going to pick up a 3 millimeter, and I'm exiting the pearl right here, the 3 millimeter pearl. I'm going to sew through the 3 millimeter pearl over here, like that. That's going to place my beads on, but we have to sew around a little bit. Sew through the 11/0, through the pearl, and you want to go back through this 3 millimeter pearl. I want to make sure I have lots of threads going through it, and then through this 3 millimeter pearl. So I've sort of done like a little X there, so that I have a thread, you know, threads coming out sort of like that. And when I pull, it pulls it all into place. Go through this one again. You want to make sure you have this tight. So pull these, make sure as you're doing it, you're pulling it in. Now go through all these beads again. I got a little loose right there. Just make sure you're pulling it tight. Okay, just like that. And then I'm going to sew up through the 11/0 on the pearl, like that. And that should do you. So you should be pretty much connected at this point through all the beads. If it's feeling loose, then, you know, go through it again. You can actually, you know, you can, well, we want to go this way anyway, so let's go through this guy. We'll go through the pearl. Yeah, let's do this one more time. The 11/0, okay, yeah. And then the pearl. She needs coffee. I'm going to go through this 11/0 underneath now. Like that. Like that. And now I'm going to sew onto the bezel. So I'm just going to sew through this guy, just on the diagonal. You know, I've reversed direction there. Now I'm sewing up through the beads on the diagonal. And you can sew all the way around if you like, you know, and then tying your thread somewhere here by reversing direction. And see how nice and strong that is? It makes a really nice connection. All right, so you're going to do this on each side. So I'm going to do this one. And I'm going to do the same thing for these two. Okay, and then we'll have that whole center area completed. All right, so have fun playing with that, and then when you're done, come on back and we'll work on the necklace part. Okay, we're back. So I just wanted to show you how the pieces went together, and I think it looks so pretty. I absolutely love these stones. They look, the Ignite stones, they look sort of like vintage, very different from the foiled stones, but I love that vintage look. Really pretty. All right, so I'm going to put that aside. So now we're going to work on this part. So this little connecting piece and then this part of the necklace. All right. So thread your needle with about 30 inches of thread, maybe a little bit more. Put on a stop bead and leave about a 10 to 12 inch tail. We're going to work on this little first unit, this one right here. So I've picked up and dropped down to my stop bead 8 of my 11 OC beads. I'm going to sew those into a circle. Just going to sew through the first couple of beads. Past my stop bead, and I'm going to pull in now. Okay. So I am. Now I'm just going to reinforce this by going all the way around. So I sew 2 at a time because that's how we're going to work with this unit. We're going to put in, 2 beads are going to be like 1 bead. You'll see what I mean. So I'm just going all the way around. I'm passing the stop bead here. These 2, and just 2 more. This is what I have. Got this little unit, right angle weave unit, so I have 2 beads on the top and bottom, 2 on either side. We're going to work with those 2. I'm going to pick up 6 of our 11 O's. I'm going to sew through I'm exiting here, I'm going to sew through that group of 2 from the other side to put on another unit. Like that. Now I'm going to continue around. I'm going to go through this one, or that group of 2, and this group of 2. I'm going to pick up 6 of my 11 O's. I'm going to sew through the other side of that group of 2 that I'm exiting. It's the right angle weave netting. We've done a lot of this. If you need me to go a little bit slower, like I said, I'm going to link the other videos down below so you can, if you want to, if you want to go a little bit slower, you can look at those. All right, so I'm just going to make a right angle turn here, go through these 2. I'm going to pick up 4. And I'm going to sew through these 2, putting on another unit right here, like that. I'm going to sew through these 2 and the 2 on the side here. Okay, and that's what we're going to do. Let me straighten these out a little bit so they look kind of square. That's what we're going to do for this, for this unit right here so far. So you're going to make 2 of these just like this. For the rest of the necklace, for this part, here it is here, you're just going to continue adding boxes like you have. Going to put 6, go around, do another one, go around, do another, and you're just going to keep adding boxes until you have the length of the sides of your necklace. So I have 31 boxes here for my 18-inch necklace, and that's 18 inches total length, including, the crystals and everything. So make 2 of these, and then continue on with your boxes and make 2 lengths, and then meet me back here and we'll start putting some pearls on. Okay, let's add some pearls. So I have my 4mm pearls ready to go on. So I'm exiting this this side right here. I'm going to pick up a 4mm pearl. I'm coming out of the top of this group of 2. I'm going to sew up through the bottom of this group of 2. And that puts it on the pearl on diagonally and kind of locks it in place, like that. Pick up another pearl. Going to do that again on this side. So exiting the top, I have to move my piece around a little bit. There we go. So exiting the top of those two, sewing through the bottom of the two on the other side, so that I'm putting this pearl on diagonally, like that. Now I want to get down here. So when you're doing the longer piece, you're just going to keep going down the line. So you're starting here, you're going to go all the way down the line to get that first row of pearls on. And then, let's say we have that whole line of pearls on, we have to turn around to go back this way. So exiting here, I'm going to sew back around these two, down the two in the middle between those two pearls, across these two, just moving my thread around so I can get some more beads on, and then through these two. So whether you're doing the little 4 unit box or you're doing the long piece, you're doing the same exact thing. So I'm picking up my 4mm pearl. So here I'm exiting here, so the bottom of these two. Now you just want to do the opposite. You're going to go down the top of the two on the other side. I'm just going to get that into place. See how that puts that on diagonally. Going to do that again. Exiting the bottom of this group of two. Going to go through the top of this group of two. So now, you know, you're just going, if you're doing the long piece, you're just going all the way down the line. That same exact way. All right, so get that done, and then come on back and we'll add, just on these smaller pieces, we'll add these little 3mm pearls on the ends. All right, see you in a minute. So you're exiting this little group of two here. I want to put a little 3mm pearl, that's going to be my connection point, right in between these two seed beads right here. So I'm just going to sew through. Pick up a pearl, 3mm pearl, sew through those two. Don't worry about if the thread shows a little bit. By the time we have it connected, it won't. Now I'm just going to sew around that box again. Sew through these two, like that, up through these two, and then through the pearl. That's going to kind of straighten that pearl out a little bit. And like I said, by the time we have everybody connected, you know, you're not going to see any thread. Okay, just like that. Then you're going to take off your stop bead. You're going to thread this needle and do the exact same thing. You're right in the right place here. So you're just going to put a pearl right here. Okay, so that you have a pearl on this end and a pearl on this end. All right, so get that done, then come on back and we'll continue. Okay, we're almost ready to connect our pieces. So before we do that, when you finish the length of your side of your necklace, you're going to have a loose pearl at the end. So to secure that pearl, you just want to sew around the unit with your thread, needle and thread, just to tighten it, and then sew through the back and cut off your threads. Do the same thing for this side. If you have a loose pearl, you want to make sure those pearls are those last pearls are secure. All right, I'm going to be adding a thread for my clasp, but we'll get to that in a bit. So then you're going to clip off any threads that you don't need. The only two threads we're going to work with are the threads that are exiting those 3mm pearls on this little unit. So let me pull in. So I'm exiting this 3mm pearl here. I just want to sew this unit to this unit, so I'm just going to pop it in between these two stitch in the ditch beads on the side. So the way I'm going to do that is, see, I'm exiting out of the bottom of the pearl. I'm going to sew down through here to put that pearl on. So you see how it's going to, when I pull, it's going to pop that pearl in like that. And then I want to immediately reverse direction by sewing through this plum bead on the diagonal through the gold bead, through the plum bead. I'm going to reverse direction and I'm going to go through the other stitch in the ditch bead, and then through the pearl and the 11-0 underneath it, so the stitch in the ditch bead, and that's going to, when I pull, see how that secures it right into place there? This is what it looks like. Okay, so what you want to do now at this point is go sew through the beads again. So I'm going to sew through this one, this one. I'm just sewing on the diagonal now to sew my threads in. If you need to go, if you feel like you need to go around again, go around again. I'm not going to, just for the sake of the length of the video. And then you just want to sew your threads in around your bezel, reverse direction, and then clip this thread. So that one's done. Okay, so I'm going to let you do that and then we'll attach to this. Okay, we're back. So I switched up this connection a little bit. I'll just turn it around for a second. So originally you had one thread coming out of this pearl. I actually ended up sewing that thread in around the units and clipping it off. And then I added about 15 inches of thread to a needle, and I put a needle at each end of the thread. So I have 2 needles here, like that. Okay, and I thought I'd do it on the back, but maybe I will do it on the front. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take one needle and sew through these 2. I just like this connection better. And then the other needle, I'm going to sew through these 2, like that. So now you see how I've done my connection. I'm making sure that I pull it tight. And then all I'm going to do at this point is sew around the units with each thread. So I'm going to sew through these 2 and these 2. I'm going to go up this way, just to sew everybody on. Make sure you don't get caught around your pearls. And then I'm going to do the same thing for this side. First, before I do it, I'm going to pull it nice and tight, so that's nice and snug in there. I'm going to sew through these 2. And then I'm going to go across this way. And then maybe I'll go up here like I did with the others. And you can just keep sewing around a bit until your connection feels nice and secure. And I like the way that connection worked out. All right, so there you go. So get that done on both sides, and then come on back and we'll put the clasp on. Okay, see you in a minute. Okay, we're back and we're almost there. So we're going to put the clasp on. So I'm doing mine separately because I figure after all this work, if the clasp breaks, at least I know I can just add another clasp on and everything's nice and tight. So I've threaded a couple of feet of thread, added a stop bead and enough of a tail to sew in. I'm just going to sew through these 2 beads like that. I'm going to pick up an 11/0 and I'm going to sew through the next 2. So just placing an 11/0 on in the center there. Like that. And then I'm going to pick up, checking my other necklace, an 11/0. A 4mm bicone, an 11/0, a 4mm bicone, and an 11/0. Is that right? Yes. Now I'm going to go back through all the beads again. Just that whole line that I just went through and the one that I put on. Like that. I'm going to sew through the 11/0 bicone 11/0 and the bicone. I'm going to pick up an 11/0 bicone, 11/0 bicone, and 11/0. I'm going to sew through, can I do this? I'm going to sew through the bicone on the other side, the 11/0. I'll move my hand in a second. Well, I can't get through it, so I'm just going to sew through the bicone. There we go. 11/0 bicone, like that. Through the 11/0 bicone, 11/0 and bicone. So just sort of popping a couple of end pieces on like that. And then, what am I going to do? Then I'm going to, here's my clasp. So that's what that looks like. So I'm going to pick up an 11/0. I'm going to sew through, just make sure I'm doing this right, yes, one ring of my clasp. And if your clasp doesn't have the rings facing in the right direction, let me pull in a little bit, then you can put a little jump ring on that so it's facing in the right direction. Okay, so I'm just going to sew through. Let me straighten that out like this. Like that. I'm going to pick up an 11/0, a 3mm pearl, an 11/0. I'm going to sew through the other ring like that. I'm going to pick up an 11/0 and I'm going to sew through all these guys again. So the bicone, 11/0 bicone. Now my clasp is on just like that. Okay, so you just want to, at this point, you're just going to reinforce everything. So I'm going to go through the 11/0, the ring, the 3 beads, the ring, the 11/0, back this way. I'm going to go around a bit, you know, just to reinforce everybody and make sure they're on nice and straight. And then I'm going to sew both my threads in. And then you're going to meet me back here and we're going to take a look at our necklaces. We'll finish everything back. So here's the end. I didn't sew my threads in because I'm going to take this off. I have an idea who I want to give this to, and I need to make it a little bit longer. So I didn't add the other side yet either, but you know, I kind of strategically placed it so you can see how it will look, you know, around the neck, or you see how this color looks. So here's the blue one, here's this one in those pretty ignite beads, amethyst ignite. I know this was a long video, but really each section is not hard to do, and it really is kind of enjoyable to do it and kind of fun, and we learned so many different techniques that you can use in other pieces. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope some of you dare to make it for the holidays, because it's, you know, I think it's going to be so pretty for the holidays with the bracelet and the earrings. So I want to say thank you again for joining me, and I will see you on the next video. Bye-bye.